Good evening, I'm Enari Darklore and welcome to Churikua. Tonight, in our fourth compilation from our third season, you will listen to the legends of the nun from the Cathedral, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, the Jersey Devil, and the Beast of Gevaudan. And remember that the night awaits for you. This convent had suffered greatly. A few years ago, I witnessed a tragedy that I am certain will continue to leave its mark for generations to come. My name is Ines. That was my name before I became a nun. And now I am going to tell you the sad story of Beatriz. A few years ago, in the middle of the previous century, the 19th century, Beatriz was very beautiful. We both came from wealthy families, but she longed for knowledge and a good education. As we came to discuss, there was no one at that time worthy of her heart, so her parents quickly agreed to let her become a nun. Her parents donated a significant portion of their fortune to the order as dowry. The first few days were hectic. We got to know each other since we entered on the same day to serve God. Little by little, we settled into a routine: cleaning, prayers, masses, and tasks such as embroidery, knitting, and cooking, all assigned according to each of our skills as a request by the Mother Superior. We were allowed to study, read, and learn classical languages, anyone who wished to do so, as long as it did not interfere with our daily tasks or our devotion. By the time we had become consecrated nuns, accustomed to life in the convent, something happened that shook our lives, as if God Himself were putting us to the test. Due to conflicts in the country and the invasion by French troops in 1864, chaos broke out as a result of battles fought in other parts of our state. As one of the many repercussions of our convent was closed, leaving us in the greatest uncertainty and with no alternative but to return to our homes. Some sisters managed to escape and take temporary refuge in other convents or even move to convents in other cities. Although during these journeys, they ran the risk of being intercepted by French troops. We chose to return to our homes, seek shelter with our families, and wait for the convent to reopen or for news about the future of our order. Upon arriving, Beatriz was met with an unimaginable situation. Using what little money he had left to support himself, pay the doctor's bills, and buy food. When Beatriz arrived, she devoted herself entirely to caring for him. Seeing her and having her by his side brought him great joy until the time came for him to be with God. The money they had left was barely enough to eat. Somehow we have been taught to adapt to austerity, but since she didn't have enough money for a proper burial, she borrowed money, and when she couldn't find any other way, she mortgaged the house. After all, she was only asking God for the convent to reopen just in time, since she knew the money we had left would barely be enough to get by for a while. One night, there was a desperate knock at the door. It was a man, a Frenchman, begging for help, shouting in a low voice with a French accent.
For the love of God, I'm goodness. Help, help.
She hesitated for a moment, but then remember our vows that regardless of origin, one must help those in need. She opened the door and invited him in. The soldier, covered by a hood, could barely stand. He thanked her and profusely for her help. She hurried to take him in and then his and tend to his goods and tend to his wounds. She took his uniform and devoted herself to caring of her, mending his uniform and feeding him. The young soldier claimed his name was Ferdinand, but she, to hide his origins and avoid trouble, hid his belongings in a chest, told him not to speak if anyone came to the house, and insisted that if he wanted to stay there, he must agree to go by the name Fernando. He, he readily agreed, stayed with her. Little by little, they grew closer. Each had been a burning candle in the darkness for the other's life. They talked about a variety of topics, and even after he had recovered, he insisted on staying with her a little longer. He managed to make Beatriz heart quiver. At last, a man was worthy of her. She even resolved to do it, to leave her religious vocation behind. Fernando communicated through letters that Beatriz would live in his name and then retrieve right there for his superiors, in which he stated that he was alive but in hiding, awaiting orders. Unfortunately, by November 1866, everything fell apart. The French troops were due to withdraw. Beatriz wanted to go with him, but Fernando stopped her. He told her they had to be cautious and that he had to leave, but that he would find a way to come back for her. He told her to go on with her life, but to always be willing and ready to go with him. The convent, which had undergone major changes to its facilities, finally reopened. Little by little, we returned to the convent. Some asked to stay where they were, others left to serve as missionaries, and even though there were fewer of us, we adapted to the new demands and our new lives. Not to mention that now the two of us were sharing a bedroom. Beatriz and I were reunited. We spent days catching up on everything that had happened over the years. She told me about Fernando and how she was waiting for his return. Every morning and night she prayed for him, but not to fail. She knew where he would be, so she could send him a letter, otherwise nothing. So every full moon, like the one on the night they met, she would climb up the bell tower, gazing toward the west as she waited for his return. Weeks and months passed, and I would hear her every full moon get out of bed, grab the lamp, and head to the bell tower very early before the rooster crowed. I'd hear her arrive until one day I no longer hear her return. Sometimes God's ways tend to be cruel, but only He knows why. Perhaps He didn't like being abandoned by Beatriz and decided to punish them both. That morning, Beatriz was found dead at the cathedral gates. I don't know if it was by her own choice or if she collapsed from exhaustion. But when I tried to find reasons, I just remained silent, thought I deeply regretted doing so. I asked my brothers for help in finding out what had happened, and according to what they told me, several French soldiers who fled Durango were taken prisoners and shot. Now, I understood everything. Beatriz was waiting for someone who would never return, no matter how much they loved each other. As that weren't enough, many people claim that on full moon nights, the silhouette of a nun can be seen in the bell tower. It's Beatriz, waiting for the one who could never return. And here I am, praying, praying that someday Fernando might come back for her, something they were never able to achieve in life. This is our flight. Just a few months ago, something unbelievable happened that has marked our city forever. It occurred on that feast, the day of Saints Peter and Paul, in the year of our Lord, 1284. It was common here in Hamelin, as you must realize, for us to suffer from famines, something that has affected us all, especially the youngest among us. For many of us, peddlers and some minstrels are our only source of news, including the most essential information: wars and invasions. Since, after all, there is nothing or almost nothing beyond our own lives. Until one day a man with a Pied Piper and a brightly colored suit arrived here. He came playing his Pied Piper and settled down in Hamelin's main square. Several young people enjoyed his music and stayed there. Some of us enjoyed it just as much, and little by little it became a habit. It was a time of day set aside to listen to his stories after a few songs. The young people listened intently. It seemed almost on purpose. And whenever those of us who were older approached, he would change the subject. The young people all did the same thing. They hummed along to his music. And when we asked what they were talking about, they'd answer, "And things, wars, cities beyond Hamelin, kings." But they never went into detail about anything specific that might describe what the Pied Piper was thinking. Until on the very day of Saints Peter and Paul, amid the commotion and festivities, we spotted the Piper. And then we simply saw 130 young people, all dressed in white hoods, march out in single file while the Piper played and led the way, without saying goodbye, as if they were in a hypnotic trance that only they understood and we were unaware of. Without saying goodbye, as if they were in a hypnotic trance that only they understood and we were unaware of. There was no announcement, no real explanation given to anyone, to any family. We only knew they had left because some people saw them follow him. The rest of us were just getting ready for the celebrations, preparing food, organizing activities, and planning the prayers. But we didn't notice their absence until we realized they weren't there during Mass. That day was overshadowed by anguish. Even the most succulent food grew cold, and if we ate it, it tasted of sadness since there had been no farewell, not even a goodbye, just their absence. We suspected danger and went out to look for him, but found nothing, not a trace. And so it went, week after week, with no sign of them, according to what we heard from the few witnesses. Some children and some elderly people who were so sick at the time that they couldn't leave their homes. They had passed along a path, that street, which, as the only clue to their disappearance, we call Bungalows in Dark, where we ask for silence, no music, no dancing, and as part of our grief, we created a stained glass window so we would never forget. We do know their whereabouts, but we know that wherever they may have gone, we hope they had a good life, and if God called them to his side, at least he gave them the chance to be free from suffering. What do you think happened to them? Where the where might Piper have taken them? That is the greatest sorrow of our beloved city. Here in New Jersey, life can be both challenging and simple, depending on wherever you prefer to live, in the city or the countryside. Although often living in the countryside isn't a guarantee of peace and quiet either. I am from Pine Barrens, from a farm, where we devote ourselves to daily farm work. In my case, a farm where we raise chickens. The routines involving keeping everything in optimal condition, feeding them, cleaning the areas, and maintaining the right temperature inside. These are, are constant. Not to mention household chores and schoolwork. I remember that when I was at home, I was always driven by the need to clean up after myself and keep things in order. Sometimes we had problems with badgers, raccoons, and foxes that would prowl our property and kill the chickens. That's why we relied on Smart, our dog, a Belgian shepherd who would alert us whenever one of them came into the property. There came a time where the nighttime attacks became so frequent that trained Smart to stand guard where we kept chickens. Every time we heard him bark at night, that would be out a gun and see Smart running after Don. Every time we hear him bark at night, Dad would peek out and see Smart running after something. Any animal stalking the chickens would flee in terror, and after being chased by Smart, it would end up running deep into the woods or leaving our property. Once we got used to Smart's excellent work, that stopped going out. Sometimes he'd just peek out the window or decide to go back to sleep. Until one night, he came across an even more terrifying predator. One autumn night, we heard Smart barking. He kept barking and barking, but then we heard him whimpering. My dad went out armed, but grabbed a gun. Mom grabbed a gun and stood at the front door. We heard the commotion of the chickens and Smart's whimpers. Dad went out carefully, and I stayed behind Mom at the front door. Dad fired a shot into the air, and right after that, we heard a growl and saw something huge fly off. We couldn't believe what we saw. Smart at the barn door, injured but alive. Once Dad saw that there was no danger, we rushed to his aid. We grabbed some blankets, loaded Smart into the car, and headed to find bed. The next morning, we saw feathers scattered around, the remains of some chickens on the ground, and most unsettling of all, mixed in with the blood of the chickens and Smart's blood were hoofprints. We looked for tracks in the mud, but they barely went a couple of meters before disappearing, as if it had vanished into thin air or flown away. Mom simply exclaimed.
The Jersey Devil.
According to what my mom told me, it is a creature that lives in the region, here in Pine Barrens, basically a demon with hooves, wings, and the face of a horse or a donkey. There are many stories about its origin, but the one my mom told me was that a long time ago there was a family named Leeds. Mary Leeds, or Mother Leeds, was about to give birth to her 13th child, who, whether due to a thought or because of his father's faith and lineage, was destined to be devil. Shortly after birth, the transformation took place, after which the child flew away, leaving home behind, destined to remain here in Pine Barrens, attacking animals and any unfortunate souls who venture into the woods, especially late at night or during inclement weather. He continued to defend our home from animals and predators, but there were nights when we'd hear growling and he'd run off, scratching at the door, begging to come in, only for us to find the next morning that some chickens were missing and there were footprints on the ground. It strikes me that it has been flying over the area for centuries, and if it weren't for that night where I, too, saw it fly, I wouldn't have believed for a second that it existed. Not only I saw it flying that night, although many people didn't believe me, I know what I saw. What do you think? Is it that they are seeable real, or was it just a figment of my imagination? A few years ago, I lost my sister Emmanuel, a victim of the inexplicable. She was afraid, and even thought she wasn't afraid of anyone. She couldn't overcome what was in store of her. She was one of the many victims of what we now call the beast of Gevaudan. In late 1764, Emmanuel went out to tend our sheep, right, since the beast was on the prowl. We were all afraid, but she had to go. Every day since the first attack, we'd live in fear. We'd be next. And just as we began to realize it was getting late and Emmanuel hadn't arrived, that's when we feared the worst. She had been accompanied by a shepherd, a boy barely a year younger than her named Pia. He arrived with his father, saying that a huge wolf with gray fur streaked with black had attacked Emmanuel. While she was being attacked, he fled without looking back. As they'd agreed, they'd protect each other, and if one of them was attacked, the other was to escape without hesitation, without looking back, and bringing the bad news to their families. The next day, they went to retrieve her body. They recognized her by the petticoat I had embroidered her by myself. There was no doubt about it. It was her. I couldn't see her. Mom wouldn't let me. But from what I was told, the creature had left her unrecognizable. And from what I heard, it had torn out her head and heart. In the summer of that year, a shepherdess named Jean Boulet was attacked by the beast that took her life. She was the first victim. We assumed it was a wolf. Since there were several in the region, generally they don't tend to attack anyone during the day, unless you provoke them or venture too deep into the forest. Many said that based on the description, it must have been a beast rather than a wolf. That's how it got. Groups were organized and hunts were launched to track it down, including a unit from His Majesty's Guard. But not to avail. They killed wolves, yet we remain afraid. The beast continued to stalk us. Many died, and their names fill up on a mazy belief that scholars, authorities, and even parishes kept compelling with no end in sight. Until in 1755, one of the king's arquebusiers killed a wolf. They even took it to Versailles, and we celebrated. We were happy that we could finally go out without fear of the beast. The attack had finished, but a few months later, there were more attacks. It was already an utterly deplorable and harrowing task to identify a new victim, and on top of that, to collect the remains, which were in such a deplorable state that we weren't even allowed to comfort of seeing them one last time in their coffins. That's how we lived, in fear. Every time someone went out, we entrusted them to God. We prayed before leaving, and upon returning, we gave thanks that we were still alive. As you well imagine, I was the one in charge of tending to the flock once these attacks had ended. Like Emmanuel, I was accompanied by Pierre, and after the attacks resumed, we made the same agreement. Whoever the victim might be, we had to flee without hesitation, without looking back. to warn the family of the tragedy. Our disappointment was so great that we couldn't understand how they had only caught the beast with such confidence. Had they caught the right beast? Was there anyone or others? And of course, the hunt continued, and the victims kept falling just the same. Until in 1767, accompanied by Pia, we went out and the sheep, but on our way back, we heard growls coming from among the trees. We tried to protect ourselves as best as we could, since we didn't know where it was. We thought we heard a wolf, but when we looked more closely, we saw it. It wasn't a wolf, it was a beast. It landed nimbly in two legs, deepened, and before we had time to react, it killed a sheep and pounced on Pia. At that moment, I ran. I ran with all my might, without hesitation, without looking back, even as I heard Pia's cries of pain and agony. My eyes filled with tears, but I ran straight home. I told them what I did, and accompanied by my father, we went to Pia's house to break the bad news to them. Shortly after the attack and Pierre's funeral, the Marquis Biapshi organized a large hunt, and John Still, a peasant from our community well known for his skill with weapons and his hunting prowess, was the one who killed the beast on the slopes of Montmoucher. How can I be so sure? Well, because when it was dead, the creature, which they describe as a huge dog, so they couldn't say for sure whether it was a dog or a wolf, was found to have human remains in its stomach. Of course, they didn't want to make the same mistake and give us false hope all over again. It's a shame it took so long to finally kill the creature. How many victims were there? How many wolves and how many innocent people died because of it? Now, peace has finally come, but it's an empty peace. Without those loved ones who, through no fault of their own, deserving neither it nor fearing it, were the worst victims.